Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the mastery of the four elements and how these four elements have to do with corresponding to our psychological states. When we're talking about the four elements, earth, fire, water, and air, esoterically we're speaking of them as psychological states of being. The physical manifestation of the four elements is their physical appearance. Behind every physical appearance, there lies a mind and soul. So the mind and soul of these elements are what appear in our psychological makeup: earth, fire, water, and air. Water being the emotions, air being the flighty mind, earth being the physical body in and of itself, as well as the mind in its earthly state, or the atom mind. Um, we have the fire, which is the inner impulses and the will. And as you can see, the 12 zodiac correspond to these four elements with 3 signs in each element: Aries, fire; Leo, fire; Sagittarius, fire. For example, these are the 3 signs of the zodiac that have the fire element. Now, the magician is one who is able to command the elements of nature. A magician is one who is able to have control over the 4 elemental kingdoms: the gnomes, the sylphs, the Undines, as well as the salamanders. These creatures exist in the subatomic realm of the 4th dimension. In the 3rd dimension, we're the physical, but beyond the physical is the 4th dimension, which is the vital energy dimension, where the elementals uh, actually live. And those elementals, as the ancients said, that the thunder or the lightning or the floods or the crashing of the waves was the sound of the war and the fighting of the elements. The 4 elements are always in a chaotic state and must be brought into control with the 5th principle, or the 5th element, being ether. Ether being the transcendental, space-like quality, which is the precursor of the 4 elements. The 4 elements descend from fire, air, water, and then earth, from the most subtle to the most dense. Beyond fire, there is space. Beyond the 5 elements of space, there is Brahman. Brahman is the supreme, that supreme everlasting spirit, or the Christ, or the Christos, or the Jehovah. That principle elevates these 5, the 5th element being closely related to the Divine Mother, the womb, creating space for the firstborn light, the sun. And that sun is that fire. That fire, we get the air, which is a mediating principle between the other elements. So, in our journey, our esoteric journey, we have to learn how to manage these elements within our psyche. We start with earth. Earth is our day-to-day mundanity of life, our labors, our vocation, our physical health. Are we in tune with our rhythms, the rhythm of the day and the rhythm of the seasons? The sun spikes with energy at 6 a.m. because that is the coordinate that is ruled by Aries. Aries is a cardinal fire sign. Are we waking up with a bang? Are we getting up? Are we going through the correct cycles and routines and labors? Does our work align with our spirit? Do we feel that our purpose in life and our day-to-day actions are aligned with the earth element and also aligned with our inner spiritual goals? So something that can harm the earth element is basically feeling that you're in a job or vocation that is not for you spiritually, that you don't have a routine, not very active, not very concerned with one's what their intake is of foods and drinks, addictions, chemical imbalances. Then we move on to water, which would then be emotions, relationships, the flow of your life. When you're purifying the water element, you're purifying your emotions. You're observing them, allowing them to take place, but from the witness standpoint, you're able to correct and organize the water element. Now, the Christ principle, or the solar heroes that we see in the transcendental stories, are always commanding the water. Moses is parting the Red Sea. Jesus is walking on water. Jesus calms the storm in the boat. This is all representation of your inner spiritual calmness. The spiritual God within you gives you the power to calm these inner water storms, the inner flood, or part the Red Sea within. A magician or alchemist has to be able to control the elements within his psyche: earth, water, air, and fire. The fire of the impulses, the air of the mind, the water of the emotions, and the physical body, or the instinctual center. Once you are in control of these four elements within, then you will be able to command the elements of nature without. Your life will be organized. Your relationships will be better. Your mind will be more clear and less flighty. We have to correct the flightiness of the mind and stabilize the sylphs. The sylphs help us to have organized thoughts. The gnomes help us to be laborious and studious. The salamanders help us to have the correct impulses and will. So when we have a correct understanding of the elements, we have a correct understanding of the nature of God, the nature of our mind. So we meditate on earth, such as rocks or crystals. We feel the earthiness, the hardness of our bones and bodies, sometimes the monotony of life. Then we have the water element. Where do we feel our water? Our inner astral kingdom, our inner emotions, what moves us. Then we have the air element, our mind. Is our mind flighty, or is it at rest? To contain the air element, we need lots of concentration to develop our concentration and our attention spans. Nowadays, the average attention span is even lower than it was, and it keeps decreasing due to not being able to concentrate and focus on a specific point. We can awaken our emotional intelligence and our clairvoyance by looking at a glass of water, a clear glass of water, or meditating on any stream, lake bed, ocean. The ancients would meditate upon water to open up the inner faculties within. As within, so without. So working with the external elements like earth, water, air, fire, by contemplating them, you're making a direct connection to that kingdom within yourself. So when we master the air element, we're mastering concentration. When we master the water element, we're mastering clairvoyance. When we master fire, intuition, earth, to have a good foundation. Because we know that the purification of the body is the purification of Solomon's temple. Once the temple is purified, then it can be built without hammer or sword, which means a self-sufficient process. The inner bodies must be built. The physical body is not the end. More bodies are produced. In the same way a flower blossoms and blooms when the sun and the correct conditions are met, in the same way the inner bodies blossom. So we're able to explore these different vehicles, commanding the inner elements within. Someone that has mastery of the water element has full control over their emotions, very equilibrated. They're not scared to get into relationships, but at the same time, they are not full-on dependent on them. Someone who has mastered the earth element is someone who has found the perfect vocation, the perfect dharmic purpose, the perfect physical routine, and method of operation to execute the inner soul's eternal goals. Mastery of the air, as we said, someone who has full control over the mind, and so on. So in the Western and Eastern esotericists, starting from the bottom chakra, the journey up the spine is the journey up the elements. Starting at earth, then you have the water, then air, then fire, and then finally spirit. That's why Jesus says, John the Baptist says, "The one that will come after me will baptize you with fire, for I only baptize you with water." Because John the Baptist is the inner, higher intellect. Please watch the Mysteries of John the Baptist video on this channel. He is the enlightened intellect which takes you to the higher I am, or the blessed bridegroom, or the lamb, the peaceful guest, the eternal one who resides within all of us. So this is how we consider the elements, that all things are alive. This realm that we live in is made up of the four elements. Our spirit souls are born out of the divine ether, the divine space. Divine Mother is the space. The sun that comes from that space, the firstborn, and we emanate from that sun. Now the physical sun is just the appearance. The spiritual intelligence behind it is an actual being, that being referred to as the Christ. That Christ is also within us. When our soul descends into disorganized elements, then the soul begins working on organizing these elements. Once the elements are fully organized, then the soul takes upon its progress to the more subtler realms. We can see that, of course, there's some type of purification or judgment. So if the ancient laws of Mott, our hearts were weighed on against a feather, our hearts must be as light as a feather in order to ascend to the higher spheres, to do the will of the Creator. But in order to do that, the alchemists knew that the elements, being psychological soul correspondences of the inner nature of man and woman, that by purifying and stabilizing and reorganizing the elements, man was able to inhabit and understand the fifth element, which is the space, the ether, and then go beyond it to the true transcendental realm, which is encounter space, which is nowhere but everywhere. This physical realm is an eternal projection that manifests as an effect from that causal realm. So this is what we have to understand. John the Baptist is the one that baptizes us with water. He's the higher intellect. That higher intellect allows us to wake up to the higher nature within us. That higher nature within us is a small partial of the divine Lord Krishna or Christ, which is the perfect accumulation of love and wisdom. When love and wisdom come into contact with each other, true knowledge is produced. Beyond this is the Father, or Kether. Beyond Kether is the supernal, the Father who art in secret, the hidden one, Amun-Ra. Initiation is life's journey through the 12 zodiac. The sun goes through the 12 zodiac. We also go through an internal 12 zodiac yearly, as well as throughout our life. We have our birth as a baby, then adolescent, then adult, then finally we begin to wane into an elderly person, and then finally we meet our death, and we are able to transcend to the next realm. That's the same cycle that the sun takes place. The sun is a physical manifestation of those eternal truths that are always around us, holographically, within, without. It's about the transmutation of these elements. The ancient Greeks, which studied under the ancient Egyptians and Kemet, understood that the phase of initiation and waking consciousness happened in the phase of the elements. So you'd start with earth, which would be the automatic consciousness, kind of more automated, ego-based. Then you ascend to the water baptism, which is the baptism of truth, when you understand that there is truth, that there is more than the body, the emotional awakening. Then you ascend to meet Christ in the clouds. Jesus says he'll be coming in the clouds. You meet that spirit in the clouds when the mind enters into its silent state. Up until now, it hasn't been. Once you reach that, then the baptism of fire comes with the purified mind, if there's enough heart and compassion in the heart. The heart and the ability to love and have compassion for humanity is all have to do with the energy sources of the body and how much energy is actually getting to the heart. If we are wasting all of our electromagnetic energy in riotous living, such as oversexed lifestyles, gluttony, hatred towards others, any type of mental aggregate, this makes it very difficult for the heart to become charged with that bioelectric magnetic energy, which in and of itself is a manifestation of the Supreme. So we need to find a way to rekindle our hearts through the ancient stories. Stories like Jack and the Beanstalk also portray the elimination of the giants and the egos that reside within the mind. When Jack, the son, travels up the beanstalk, the spinal column, into the head, similar with Moses traveling to the Mount Zion to receive the 10 tablets, to acquire a truth, the hero journey, the journey of the soul. We start with earth. We start to purify our earth. We start to understand the sensations of the body, what it means to be in a body. Then we move on to water, purifying the emotions, our relationships, our emotional temperaments, our astral projection abilities, awakening consciousness. Then we move to air, where our thoughts become more fine, more detailed, more precise, more sharp, but less uncontrolled. You're able to control the stream of thought and have conscious thought. Now in the age of Aquarius, this knowledge is basically being dumped at us from the pitcher of water. The man with the pitcher of water is dumping this knowledge on us now, and it's easier than ever. Once you reach that, the fire, the baptism of fire, is what purifies any of the remaining ancestral aggregates, karmic aggregates. Any of the sinful animalistic qualities are fully purified, and one enters the spirit, or the fifth element, which is the Divine Mother. The Divine Mother space, which produces the infinite consciousness, once it's impregnated by the Father active principle. So that God, that monad, moves in twos of masculine and feminine, wisdom and love, coming together, creating the ability to create all of these partial, unique beings. And all of us can ascend to reawaken to our true nature and find out who exactly is behind the curtain, who is pulling the strings, who is the true puppet master beyond the veil. And stories like the Bible are scripted into this realm. These events happen within us on a day-to-day basis, a monthly basis. The story of Moses is eternal. The story of Noah is eternal. These stories have hidden meanings that allow us to understand ourselves from a more psychological, conscious level. Each of the characters represents a specific psychological archetype within that's taking you through your journey through the elements. As the sun evaporates water, we see that the muddy water becomes pure. It evaporates, leaves the dirt behind, and ascends into the clouds. The clouds then produce thunder and then rain to replenish. This cycle also takes place on a soul level. As within, so without. Everything that we see from a physical perspective can be seen within, as long as we are consciously, actively aware and meditating on these correspondences. A true syncretist, or esotericist, or mystic knows the doctrine of analogies and correspondences and can easily chart unseen realms and be able to understand how the mechanics of the mind and the soul and how it fits in to this realm that we reside in. The four elements are represented by the sword for air, the wand for fire, the pentacle for earth or coins, and a chalice for water. See, the chalice represents the female regenerative system as well as the top of the skull. The sword represents air and thought, being able to dissect and splice. The pentacle is representative of the earth consciousness, which allows you to understand your stability, the stillness in the motion of life. Earth is firm, terra firma. Our bones are firm. Once we forge these four elements and awaken the 7 chakras, we then become an equilibrated being, a being with a true purpose, the purpose that it had before incarnated. When we incarnate, we slowly forget our true purpose and the will of the one who sent us. This whole experience is geared to help us equilibrate our elements and temper ourselves. We temper our sword, we temper our nervous system, and we become sharp-minded. We have the ability to have clairvoyance, which is to see the truth beyond just the appearances, because there's 2 truths. There's the appearance and the cause. There's the truth of causes and the truth of appearances. And these two truths sometimes seem to contradict each other, but they are always one and the same. The physical realm is a product of that transcendental cause, what we call God. You see, there's two gods, the God of fire and spirit, which is the most dense of the creator, and then the highest supreme, which is its cause, is the spirit of light and life. So we have the spirit of light and life, which produces the demiurge, or a creator or architect, of someone that creates this realm, who is made up of fire and spirit, which is why it is able to transcend this realm. However, still plays by the rules and laws of it, whereas the light and life is our pure, true home source, and is what is the cause and generator behind all of this that is occurring now. Everything that we see in front of us. Everything is torus fields. All things are made of torus fields. We can see our body being in the shape of a cross, being in the shape of the pentagram. When we lay down on our backs with our feet stretched out and our arms to our sides, we're in the same shape as a starfish, same shape as a pentagram. When you cut an apple in half, you can see that we are a key part of this realm, just like anything else. So the nihilists, the atheists, the Darwinists who say that, we are, meaningless, life is no purpose, you weren't anything before here, you won't be anything after, is all just trying to cover up the fact that you are the eternal witnesses. Each of us has the eternal witness within, and allows us to all have our individual sense of self eternally. And that very well did exist before this physical realm. But we come here to forge and fuse our elements with the fifth, and fully become organized so that we can have full control over earth, water, air, and fire, so that when we transcend this realm of earth and water, which is we're baptized into the womb, we come out of the womb and we enter the tomb. But the body's the tomb. It's also a womb where a soul is being formed. Our bodies, even when we're adults, has a soul that is being created within it. Jesus says, in patience, be patient, then you will possess your soul. Soul is something that is developing. This is where it develops. When this soul descends into this realm, it becomes mummified or intoxicated by the material realm and has to organize these four elements. Once we transform and transmute the spiritual nature of earth and water, we then attain to the realms of air and fire. This is how the angels exist, in bodies of air and fire, or air, fire, and spirit. They don't need to have bodies of flesh and bone and water. We're here to transmute the water with the heavenly light within us. That consciousness, that inner fulcrum within us, our true identity, is the inner sun that is evaporating the waters within our soul and allowing them to become